of all, my title of the topic is democratic values and good governance. So before going to the democratic values and good governance, I would speak very shortly. What is democracy? So what is democracy? Democracy, in a general way, we say that democracy is a set of government which is run for the people, and it is the representatives is being elected by the people itself, who represent the government. So this is a very short definition of democracy, but a very famous person, means Abraham Lincoln, then the President of America. He has given a very good definition, and which has been implemented by many of the countries. And Abraham Lincoln says that democracy is a government for the people, of the people, and by the people. So this is a very short definition about democracy, in which the whole thing is being included. Like, what is democracy? Democracy is a set of a government which works for the people, which is for the people, and which run according to the people. Means, in short, we can say that people or the citizen of that particular country has the right to change the government or to choose the government. Now, coming to our country, India, we can say that India is one of the largest countries who has who's been said as a largest democratic country in the world. So this democracy is run due to certain laws, and the main law of our democratic type is the Constitution of India. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? मैडम, मेरी आवाज आ रही है क्या?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Okay.
Continue, ma'am.
Okay. So the Constitution of India is the supreme law. The Constitution of India is the supreme law. The document lays down the framework demarcating fundamental political code, structure, procedures, powers, duties of government. And these institutions are the sets of our fundamental rights and directive principles and the duties of a citizen. So the Indian Constitution is said to be one of the longest written constitution than any other country. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee and is also now our constitutional supremacy. Our Indian Constitution is a constitutional supremacy. It is not a parliamentary supremacy. Means here the government is not elected by the parliament, but it is being elected by the people of or the citizen of that particular country. So it imparts constitutional supremacy, not parliamentary supremacy, since it was created by a constituent assembly rather than a parliament. And it was adopted by the people with a declaration in its preamble. Parliament cannot override the constitution, even though we say that parliament is supposed to be supreme, but it comes under the constitution. That means the constitution is the supreme law in Indian government or in Indian democracy. Now, the Constitution of India came into effect on 26 January 1950, which is also called as a Republic Day, or we the Indian people celebrate 26 January as a Republic Day. Everybody must be knowing that 2 years, 11 months and 17 days was taken to prepare the Indian Constitution. Now, with Dr. Ambedkar, many of the Constituent Assembly members also helped him in framing the Constitution. And previously, we used to celebrate only 2 national festivals, that is 26th January as a Republic Day and 15th August as an Independence Day. But nowadays, in many of the colleges, we see that 26th November is also celebrated as a national festival, saying that it is a constitutional day. 26th November is said to be a constitutional day, and we celebrate it. Rather, we take an oath of preamble in our college. So the Constitution of India became effective from 26 January 1950, and it declares India a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, assuring its citizens justice, equality, and liberty. Means when the Constitution was framed, so these were the some principles that were included in the Constitution. They are sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic. And with the same, all the citizens have the right to enjoy justice, equality, liberty, and fraternity. The word secular and socialist came afterwards. It came after 1976 during the emergency. So these two words, secular and socialist, were added in the preamble in 1976 during the emergency. Now I'll come to the evolution of democracy or the different models of democracy. Now there are many different models that comes under the evolution. Evolution. What is evolution? What is the meaning of evolution? Evolution means that right from the time when democracy was established till today, what were the different changes that came into democracy? Like if we say a classical democracy. So classical democracy is somewhat a traditional democracy, and it was being established in Athens. Athens was the first to say about democracy or to utter the word democracy. But that time, democracy has a different pattern. That time, democracy was in Athens. All the people, all the citizens of Athens were had a right to participate in the political program only, but excluding the slaves and the women. Women and slaves didn't have the right to participate in the political process. Only the Athenian citizens had the right. So that time there was an indirect democracy. Indirect democracy means where all the people, all those who are the citizens of Athens have the right to take the decisions for their own country. They didn't have the election system or the representative system. All the Athenians, they used to come together on one platform and they used to take the decision for their country. So that type of democracy is called as a classical democracy, or rather we can say it was a traditional democracy or indirect democracy. So the first concept of democracy established in Athens in something 580 BC, that is before Christ. After that, the second type or the second module of democracy is protective democracy. Now, protective democracy, the origin of democracy as an instrument of protecting human rights and liberties, which can conveniently be traced to the late 17th and early 18th centuries. John Locke is regarded as the great apostle of protective democracy. His civil right was based on democratic principles, was created through the instrumental of social contract to protect the right to life, liberty, and property to ensure pursuance of happiness. Means the second type of democracy is a protective democracy whose basic aim is to protect the rights and liberties of the citizens of that country. So protective democracy came in the late 17th or the early 18th century. And John Locke is said to be one of the most greatest follower of this type of democracy, because in his social contract, many a times he has mentioned about the civil society, and his civil society is based on this protective democracy. So the third module of democracy is developmental democracy. Now, what is developmental democracy? So basically, this developmental democracy highlights on the economical aspects of the individual. So in the last sections, we have focused our attention on two aspects of democracy, that is classical and protective. Though these two models are very important, but still there are other models, new models, and among that new model is one of the developmental model, or we may call it as a developmental democracy. This type of democracy is very powerful in mechanism. Moral self-development and highest and harmonious expansion of individual capacity. We are thus in a position of two elements of development. One is moral support and the other is individual capacity, which is mainly concerned as an all-round development of moral qualities of men which are degraded. Rousseau believed in such types of democracy. So the third is developmental democracy, in which the development of human being is given more and more important. Means the morality of the individual is developed so that he can present himself very properly in the society. And this type of democracy is related with the Rousseau's concept. Rousseau was the great follower of developmental democracy, and basically in his principle, he has said about the development of art, culture and civilization. The fourth model of democracy is participatory of democracy. It is that type of democracy where people assemble at an open place and directly participate in all the deliberations. Ma'am, can you hear me? मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Continue,
okay,
please
okay.
continue.
Okay. So the next one is participatory democracy, in which the citizens directly participate in all the political deliberations. So there is no provision of participation through representatives. A participatory democracy never permits its functions to be performed through representatives. People themselves enjoy supreme power by exercising it. They enjoy the absolute authority to take decisions, which is generally affect the state or body politics. The important feature of participatory democracy is people will have the opportunity to directly participate in the functions and decision-making processes of state, and there shall be no provisions for delegating power to another body or organ. At all stages of state administration, even local levels, people are the determining factors, and that cannot be challenged or done away with to facilitate representative system. Now, in this type of democracy, there only the citizens had the right to participate in the political process. No other body can govern them. No other body can take decision on behalf of the country. Though the people, the citizen of that, मतलब उस राष्ट्र के जो लोग हैं, उन्हीं को ये अधिकार दिया गया है कि वो खुद अपने राष्ट्र के बारे में सोचे, और कोई दूसरा उनके राष्ट्र के बारे में निर्णय नहीं ले सकता है, और दूसरा कोई उस राष्ट्र के बारे में सोच नहीं सकता है. मतलब वहां के जो लोग हैं, वहां की जो जनता है, उन्हीं को ये अधिकार है कि वो अपने राष्ट्र या अपने देश के बारे में सोचे. So this concept is very much related again to Rousseau, which is participatory democracy. He did not favor party system. मतलब रूसो ने कभी भी पक्ष पद्धति को महत्व नहीं दिया. उसने हमेशा यही सोचा कि जो लोग जिस देश के नागरिक है, उन्हीं को ये अधिकार होना चाहिए कि वो अपने देश का चुनाव करे, वो अपने देश के बारे में अच्छा या बुरा सोचे. उनके अलावा और किसी को ये अधिकार नहीं होना चाहिए कि जो उनके देश पर उनके देश के बारे में निर्णय ले या उनके देश के बारे में सोचे. So Rousseau was a champion of participatory democracy. He did not favor party system. In modern times, it is suggested that party system is essential for the smooth functioning of participatory democracy. Only political party can organize such democracy and lead it to the stage of success. तो यहाँ पर यह है कि रूसो ने कहा है कि भाई देश के नागरिक ही देश के बारे में सोच सकते, लेकिन ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है. इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी दैट ऑल द पीपल विल थिंक गुड अबाउट द कंट्री, और मे बी देयर आर सम पीपल हु आर वेरी इंटेलेक्चुअल, देयर आर सम पीपल हु आर वेरी वाइज, बट with that same, there are some people who are very dull, who don't want to participate in the political activities of that country, and then there is a big threat to that country to take the decisions, because half of the people are in the favor of taking a good decision and half of may not be. So then it was decided that a good democracy cannot be run with taking all the people of the country together to make the decisions. There should be some body to govern, and on the behalf of the people, this governed body will take the decision to run the government. And then in democracy, the party system was invented or party system was established. Participation of citizens in democratic decision making in contrast to indirect or representative democracy. Direct democracies may operate through an assembly, and direct democracy is for the large population of the country, whereas indirect type of democracy is only for a limited population. Means if the population of a country is very small, then they can participate in making decision of the country, or then they can have the right to take the decision. Means all people can involve in the political process. But if there is a country like India whose population is as huge as we all know, 132 crores, so it is very impossible to take the decision with taking all the people. Means all the people cannot be participated in the political process. The people who can elect their representatives, they can run the government, or they can take the decision on behalf of the country for these people. So indirect and direct democracy is being bifurcated with the population of the country, with the intellectual level of the country, with the interest of political with the interest of political participation in the country. So these all things somewhere impact the country to take the decision. Now next I go to the representative democracy. Representative democracy is again a part of indirective democracy. Representative basically means where the people, the citizen of that country, they elect their representatives, and these representatives act as a governing body, and they run the government on behalf of these people. So these were some of the models of democracy. Now I will go to the second part, that is dimensions of democracy. In the dimensions of democracy, mainly it highlights, or it has three aspects, that is social aspect, economical aspect, and political aspect. So social aspect means it is a political, social, and economic philosophy within socialism that supports political and economic democracy. It has been described as the most common form of Western or modern socialism, as well as the reformist wing of democratic socialism. What is democratic socialism? So further, I will explain it, what is democratic socialism. Before that, the three dimensions of democracy, that is social. Social democracy means where the people has the right to live in equality. They should have equality, justice, fraternity. These are the some basic concepts of social democracy, in which there is no discrimination between the genders, there is no discrimination between the race, there is no discrimination between the religion, between the language. So all those citizens who are living in the country will enjoy equality, will have an equal equalness. So social democracy is important, because if social democracy is there, then only political and economic democracy has its importance. Otherwise, political and economic democracy doesn't have that much value if the country doesn't have a social democracy. Economic democracy means where it is based on the Marxian concept, where we say that equal pay for equal work. Means whatever, if the worker is working for 8 hours, and though if he is a male or a female, then both male, female, if they both are working for 8 hours, they should get the amount, or they should get the salary according to that. But just because she is female, she will get less payment, or just because he is male, he will get more payment. It's not of that sort. Equal pay to equal work, irrespective of gender. That is economic democracy. And political democracy means if you have completed 21 years of age, if you don't have any criminal record, then you are liable to stand as a representative for the election. So this is a political dimension. So all social, political, and economical dimension, they are related to each other somewhere or the other. All three has an important place in their aspects. without anyone, the other two is of no value, or they don't have that much importance. So to run a successful democracy, to have a good government, social, political, and economic dimensions are very important. Now I will go to the fourth module, that is decentralization. What is democratic decentralization? Now, democratic, I think so, you must be knowing what is democracy. As I've told you that democracy is a government which work for the people, which work for the development of the people, which work for the economical progression of the people, which work for the social equality in the society. So, now what is decentralization? Decentralization means delegation of authority, delegation of power. So the concept of or you can say division of power. So the concept of decentralization came into being after knowing that India is a country with a very huge population and a very vast geographical area. So it is impossible for the central government to control the whole India from one central point. And therefore, a decision was made that some important subjects the central government will keep with itself, and the rest of the powers and rights will be delegated to the state government. After delegating the authorities from the central government, even the state government came to recognize that it is impossible for them also to solve the local grassroots level questions. And then it was again decided that state government will keep some rights, some authorities with itself, and rest of the authorities will be delegated to the local government. So these are the three stages where the power, the authority has been divided. And this three stages, or the division of power or the division of authority, is called as decentralization. Means where in India we have central government, state government, and local self-government. But the thing is that central government is said to be more important. The decision of the central government is every time being taken into granted, even though the authorities' powers are delegated to the state level or local government. But when some of the issues arises, that time the decision of the central government is taken into granted. So democratic decentralization is a process of devolving the functions and resources of the state from the center to the elected representative at the lower levels, so as to facilitate greater direct participation of citizens in governance. Means to have a good governance, it is very necessary that all the people of the country, all the citizens of the country will participate in the political process. And it is because of the local self-government or local lower level people many a times does not have an interest to involved in the political process. But since the local self-government came into existence, the local self-government established, even the lower level people, the grassroots level people are now interested in taking part in the political process. And that is why it has been said that Panchayat Raj is the first school to build the leadership of a democracy or of the government. So local government, including panchayats in a state, subject in the constitution, and consequently the devolution of power and authority to panchayat has been felt to the discretion of state. The constitution mandates that panchayat and municipalities shall be elected every 5 years and enjoy state to devolve functions and responsibilities to them through law. A study for the 14th Finance Commission by the Center for Policy Research shows that all states have formally devolved powers with respect to 5 core functions, and that is, these 5 core functions are water supply, sanitation, roads, communications, streets. These are the provisions of the 14th Finance Commission. Local government organizational structures have to be strengthened with sufficient manpower, serious efforts, and should be